and welcome to Economic Lifelines Nigeria. In today's episode, we review the activities of the Asset Management Company of Nigeria, that's AMCON, in the past 1 year.
At the beginning of each year, we set ourselves 2 to 4 primary goals and objectives that must be accomplished during the year. We don't do too many things. And so for 2013, the most important thing we had our eye on was the refinancing of our bonds due end of 2013. The second thing we focused on was the amendment of the AMCON Act. And the focus of that was to include the sinking fund as part of the legislation so that down the road nobody says we're not part of the sinking fund, we want to be out of the sinking fund. That was the second thing. And the third thing we wanted to do, which actually feeds into the first, is to hasten the pace, quality and quantity of our recoveries. Because only through those recoveries are we going to be able to pay off the debt. So on looking at those three things, we are fairly certain now, we're in December, that the 1.7 trillion will be refinanced very smoothly. What is left is process, but the funds, the instruments, everything that's leading to that refinancing is well under control, and we can state quite clear that that's going to go very smoothly.
AMCON currently holds 2 types of assets: trillions of naira in bad loans and assets acquired through deals done with debtors.
AMCON holds a lot of real estate, all the assets that collateralize loans, be it shares, be it financial instruments, be it tank farms, be it equipment, machinery. So they have a value. Somebody must have ascribed a value to it to lend against it, or even to purchase it. You know, the loans the purpose of the loan was to buy an asset. On top of that, the assets were also collateralized with other assets. So AMCON has a wide range of assets. They have thousands and thousands of relationships, and relationships that were, collateral arrangements that were packaged, some guarantees, some cash, some financial instruments. And so what happens is that they take stock of it, they value this asset from time to time, and make a decision as to what next and when to unload them into the market.
We have non-performing loans, which constitute about 90% of our holdings. And then we have assets which are proprietary assets inherited from loan for features or settlement. We own all kinds of assets. I mean, our prop portfolio, net of the banks which we own, are just under $500 billion. And they comprise securities, both listed and private, real estate, and businesses. Primarily those 3 asset classes.
We started with loans, and our objective always has been to get our money back that we paid for the loans. But in doing that, each one is different. And so sometimes we have to convert some debt to equity. Sometimes we reach agreements where we actually take assets over. And so each one is different. But we ended up publicly, we have some shares in some industries now, airline industries, some manufacturing companies, some downstream oil and gas industries. We've ended up either with assets or being a significant owner of the companies at this point.
The rescue of Nigeria's ailing banking sector cost just under 6 trillion naira. That's the face value of AMCON bonds guaranteed by Nigeria's government. Given the cost of the bailout, not everyone has considered AMCON a good idea, and almost 2 years on, the handling of AMCON's assets remains a touchy subject.
There's a lack of trust by the public in a whole in a lot of government institutions. A lot of it's historic, and it behooves institutions like AMCON that have been given a lot of public money. There's a lot of public debt which the government of Nigeria is going to have to hold if it goes wrong, that they're managing. And because of that, they have to be transparent.
I think everywhere in the world, resolution vehicles are typically like elephants in the room, or you say gorillas in the room. And why is that? The fact that they're always very sensitive to some political issues, given the fact that, remember very well, Federal Minister of Finance and CBN are actually the major shareholders of AMCON. They both have 50% equity, and to some extent, given the fact that the act establishing AMCON was actually the act that was passed into law by the Senate. So to some extent, you still have some political influences.
However, AMCON's management says that the organization operates with a governance structure designed to promote transparency and prevent foul play.
We live in Nigeria. We know what the reputation of public institutions has been in the past. So we're very aware of that. AMCON is first of all, we're a regulated entity. So every year, CBN comes in and does an examination of AMCON's operations in total. And that's what we call a routine examination. CBN also does examinations from time to time, that are special examinations. They look at specific transactions and they ask questions about specific transactions. The National Assembly also has a very keen interest in what we do. We have 2 oversight committees, one in the Senate, one in the House. Both of them are chaired by very competent and very thorough chairmen. Additionally, we have a very, very strong board of directors. And we keep saying it's made up of a deputy governor of Central Bank, an MD of NDIC, both of whom have very keen interest in making sure that the banking system, financial system is stable. We have the Director General of SEC, and we have the PEMSEC Finance. So these are people who are very serious professionals, who have spent a lot of years in their professions, and who have a very, very keen interest in making sure that nothing happens in AMCON that will embarrass them.
Another focus of AMCON this year was the amendment of the AMCON Act. The
amendment of the AMCON Act has progressed. It hasn't gone as quickly as we wanted, but it's probably 90% done. There's a process. It depends on the National Assembly. They have worked very, very, very fast, but it will be quite a record if we can actually get this done this year. And we're still hopeful that we can get the amendment duly passed by the National Assembly by the end of the year. If not, we're certain to be done certainly in the first quarter of next year. So we'll give ourselves a very good pass mark for that. But we wish it could have been done quicker, but it's not entirely in our hands. And quite frankly, we are very, very impressed with what the National Assembly has done to date regarding the AMCON amendment.
The final key objective of AMCON this year was to fast-track the pace of its recoveries.
The third thing we looked at, we wanted to do in 2013, was to hasten and quicken our recoveries. We have done that. We set a target of 40% of our standing by the end of this year. I think we're going to get close to that. I think if we don't get to 40%, we'll be close to that. It's getting more and more difficult because obviously easy ones settle first. But we've put in any number of structures that will make sure that in 2014, we actually make better progress with recoveries. So those are the 3 things we were looking at. And I think that one is clearly an A on the refinancing. On the AMCON Act, we can give ourselves a B, and on the recoveries, probably a B. But hopefully we can do better next year.
Aside from the 3 key areas, AMCON also took action in revitalizing Nigeria's downstream sector.
For those watching, Nigeria's oil sector presents a shocking paradox. Observers are amazed that one of the world's top producers of crude oil, and a country that has exported oil for over 5 decades, spends billions of dollars each year importing refined petroleum products. The state of affairs reflects decades of government regulation of fuel prices that has discouraged the private sector from investing in Nigeria's downstream oil sector. But the growing energy demands of a $250 billion economy, expanding at an average rate of 7% over the last 10 years, has put tremendous pressure on local refining capacity. A combination of corruption and the failure of poorly maintained government-owned oil refineries means that Nigeria is unable to produce enough diesel, petrol, kerosene, and other petroleum products to energize sub-Saharan Africa's second-largest economy. As a result, the difference between what is supplied from local refineries and what is needed in the country is imported. The growing demand over the last few years has meant that more and more liters of petroleum products have been imported by Nigerian entrepreneurs.
If you begin to regulate and then put a lot of subsidy in any deal, what you see is that there's a lot of loophole, and it becomes an all-commerce thing, because it's like people taking a share of the national cake. Everybody that was somebody had an oil and gas business. Okay, I mean, if we are talking about an import of one cargo, you are talking about something in the neighborhood of $15 million. That's a lot of money, a lot of cash. And many times in a quarter, you have several cargoes coming in. And what even became interesting, we started to do what we call the crude swaps, wherein you pick up crude and deliver refined products in exchange. It was big business. People talked about billions and billions. It was an all-commerce affair, and therefore you had both skilled and unskilled traders in the game. And where you have all of that, there's always heightened risk because you have people who do not know how to trade. They basically understand how to buy and sell, but when you are dealing with a high-value, low-margin item like that in an environment where there are all kinds of exposure, that's in foreign exchange fluctuations, crude oil prices fluctuations, and you need to use complex derivatives to hedge your bets in the market, you find out that the average marketer begins to fail when things change internationally.
Change came in the wake of the global economic and financial crisis in 2008. The sharp crash in crude oil prices that followed, and the equally sharp depreciation of the naira in early 2009 meant that many petroleum product importers who borrowed huge loans to finance trades were caught on the wrong side of the declines and had to swallow huge losses.
The price of crude started crashing. Meanwhile, they had made orders based on high prices. So by the time the products came, the prices had already crashed and it was being sold much lower.
Seyu Dantata is the CEO of one of the largest petroleum products importers in Nigeria.
At the time, I think 105, 115, and down to $35. I mean, you're talking about 70% or 80% reduction. I mean, crash, in the price. And you have people that have cargoes outside, because once you arrive, you more or less lock in the price. But there's very few of the local companies that actually know the international know-how to be able to hedge themselves. So obviously, that is a problem.
So they suffered a lot because of that. Secondly, there was also a coincidence in the sense that the naira was devalued at that time. I think from about 118 naira to about 140 naira. So that compounded the issues because many of them were borrowing in dollars from the banks. So regardless of the exchange rate, although they will sell their products in naira, they will have to buy the dollar and pay the dollar loans. So really, these are the two major reasons that compounded their inability to pay their loans, and their loans were not performing by 2009.
The sharp change in the business environment resulted in many of the petroleum products importers ending up at the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, Nigeria's bad bank designed to buy problematic loans from Nigerian banks and stabilize the sector. However, the problems of the petroleum products importers were compounded over the last year after the latest attempts to end controversial fuel subsidies in January 2012. These attempts were met by widespread protest and a 2-week national strike. Trade unions and other protesters argued that the government cannot be trusted to spend any gains from the removal of the subsidies responsibly. The corruption around the disbursement of the subsidies justified their fears. Several probes into the handling of the fuel subsidies have led to the indictment of several players. However, while the probes are good for the sector over the longer term, the verification of the subsidy claims meant that many were not paid the subsidies for several months. And because many planned to use the subsidy payments to pay back bank loans, the industry suffered under the pressure of the high interest payments linked to bank loans.
Truly, honestly, the subsidy has been something that has been talked about for the last 3 regimes. Obasanjo talked about it, late Yar'Adua talked about it, and obviously the current government have talked about that. And when you give the
marketers hope that is something that will eventually take place, of course, being a businessman, people will go out and take chances, hoping that it will become a reality. And when you all of a sudden you keep shifting the goalpost, what happens is you keep making a forecast that is not becoming reality by promises that the government have made. So, of course, that will deepen you even further. And then you wake up one night, you realize that there are some malpractices out there being perpetrated by other, I would say, tout of the industry. So you find yourself in a dilemma. Here you are, a major player in the industry, but obviously you don't have control. You don't know what will change tomorrow. In the 2011, where government decided that they were not going to pay anybody until they have taken account of which is good. But in life, you know, they said every situation, they say, oh, we could have done it this way, or should have been done this way. But of course, it also put more strain in the oil companies, because here you are, you stop working, but yet you have to continue to pay the overhead.
More highlights from AMCON 2013 after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Economic Lifelines Nigeria and our review of AMCON's activities in the year 2013. Before the break, we spoke to Mustafa Chike-Obi, the Managing Director of AMCON, to get his highlights for the year. Here at CNBC Africa, we also picked some of our highlights from the season. Central banks across the world adopted varying responses to the global financial crisis, which took a severe toll on a wide range of industries. Now, in Nigeria, the central bank set up special intervention funds to help stimulate the growth of key sectors that needed help. Nigeria's central bank rolled out programs to drive the recovery of several sectors. The Power and Aviation Fund is a 300 billion naira intervention aimed at reviving these sectors. There is also a 200 million naira small and medium enterprise guarantee scheme, a fund developed with the aim of providing for the wholesale funding requirements of the microfinance banks and institutions. About 60% of this fund will be accessed by women, therefore addressing their specific business needs.
In terms of our intervention in the area of power and aviation and small and medium enterprises, as Nigeria's economy has grown and become more sophisticated, you see that we are being held back fundamentally by very weak, power production capacity. You will see, of course, also that the airlines at some point had a very major crisis. They were exposed as of 2010 to banks to the tune of about 250 billion naira, and about 35% of those loans were going bad. Were non-performing loans, and so given a number of a number of crashes, airline crashes, and so on, the industry was in a bit of a crisis. I should also say that a number of the interventions that the central bank made in 2010, these intervention funds in power sector especially, and the SME refinancing fund, restructuring and refinancing fund, were part of what we call quantitative easing, at a time that it was necessary to inject more money into the economy. In some countries, the advanced countries, they do this by, creating money and buying bonds. But in this country, being a developing country, we felt that we would inject money into the economy, not in such a direct manner, but through the real economy, through agriculture, through power, through aviation, through small and medium enterprises. So these are the reasons why we have done taking these actions.
The central bank's intervention in the agriculture sector includes the Nigerian incentive-based risk-sharing agriculture lending scheme, a non-banking agriculture financial services corporation introduced in 2012 to attend to the fast-growing needs of agribusiness in Nigeria.
As part of the role the central bank plays in the development space, the central bank has played an active interventionist role in the area of agriculture. Agriculture is 40% of Nigeria's GDP, provides about 60% of employment in this country, and therefore it's a very fundamentally strategic sector. The central bank has in the past played a number of interventionist roles to make access to agricultural credit for farmers cheaper than market forces would otherwise have it.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, working together with my ministry, developed a facility to share risk of lending by banks to agriculture. That facility is called NISAL. That facility is $350 million US, and it is going to leverage $3.5 billion US from the balance sheet of our banks into agriculture. That's a financial revolution that is backing the agricultural revolution that we are having.
200 billion naira was approved by the central bank for the restructuring and refinancing facility scheme, aimed at fast-tracking the development of Nigeria's manufacturing sector. To date, 518 companies across 6 geopolitical zones have received from these funds.
The Power and Aviation Fund, which is a 300 billion naira fund. Under that fund, eligible companies that are involved in the power sector value chain or aviation companies or aviation value chain can access credit from the banks for about 7% interest rate, which is very low relative to what prevails in the ordinary course of banking business. And they have about 15 years to repay this money, because the fundamental problem or the fundamental challenge of finance as a trigger for economic development in Nigeria is that you don't have long-term money in our economy.
Africa's most populated country is a melting pot with over 250 ethnic groups. In 2012, the National Bureau of Statistics reported that 112 million, or 64% of Nigerians, are poor. Some say this situation is what inspires the creativity that is taking the world by storm.
Creativity is about poverty. Poor people are the most creative people in the world. Rich people are not creative in terms of being athletes or being movie stars or being record producers or writers. Usually poor people define how rich people wear clothes and how we dance and how we talk. We're from the ghetto, and we have tons of those here. And we've been blessed with very creative people in Nigeria. And I think the most creative people in Africa are Nigerians. And the most creative people in the world, obviously, will be Nigerians once they have the marketing opportunities.
It's perhaps the only industry in Nigeria that is self-sustaining and that has had to grow without the aid of the government. It's a child of necessity. Nigerians naturally are creative people, and we've found ourselves evolve over time, especially the industry, the writers, the musicians, the actors. What you see today is purely self-effort.
I think the key thing about Nigerians and their creativity is their attitude, otherwise known as their persona, or what on the slang they might say, your P. Yeah. So that Nigerian persona is unique, and it's global. And when you see a Nigerian anywhere in the world, love him or hate him, you know who he is. And that is what comes through. And it's one of the reasons why the music, when it comes, is authentic, because they're coming with attitude. They're not apologizing to anybody. And I think that's one of the things. That's why hip-hop and Nigerian music, urban culture, meshed so strongly, because the attitude is, I will not lose. If you're not going to let me through the door, I'll break the door down.
Nigeria's entertainment industry is made up of businesses involved in the production and distribution of music and motion pictures. But sports, fashion, and other arts and crafts are also considered. However you define it, the sector is demanding more attention from government and the private sector.
The creative and entertainment industry holds a lot for the future of Nigeria. The entertainment industry can be a very great avenue for resolving this unemployment problem. And in fact, the studies carried out show that this particular industry requires about 5 trillion naira, to be able to really come up forcefully.
I think it's probably one of the largest employers of labor in Nigeria today. Every child wants to be an artist, whether you're from the rich home or the poor home. And this is unique because you now have rich people's children trying to imitate poor people's children. Okay, and that's what I love about it. So this is amazing. So who knows? We don't even know the population of Nigeria. How can we know the value of the industry?
One of the biggest movie channels on YouTube is a Nollywood Love channel, Iroko Partners, with something like 40 million views a month in 200 countries, with only 20% of the views coming from Nigeria. That's an incredible thing to really understand. Let's understand that Nigerian music is everywhere. I mean, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brazil, Venezuela, Jamaica, not just the UK, not just Africa, America, it's there, right? So we're coming. We're not where we want to be yet, but we're definitely coming. Let's talk about here at home. You see the telco brands fighting over endorsements. You see everybody beginning to understand that, hey, the average age of the Nigerian is 19. I want to talk to that market. Who am I going to use? Comedy, music, football, Nollywood, fashion. So soft power.
Look, the next superstar is not going to come from Botswana. It's not going to come from Namibia. The next superstar is going to come from Nigeria. That is a fact. The next superstar is going to be a Nigerian worldwide. And I make a prediction. In the next 10 years, all the most famous female black Hollywood stars will be married to Nigerians. You want to bet?
And that's where we leave it for Economic Lifelines Nigeria today. See you next month for another episode. This and past editions of the program are available on our website at www.cnbcafrica.com. So from me, Keisha Gatari, until next time, it's goodbye.